Welcome to Charts Today. It is Thursday, the 2nd of July, and today I'm starting with precious metals. And we're going to look at gold first of all. And the reason for starting with precious metals is that we are seeing signs of support being found at 39.50 for gold, waiting to see if we can activate this upside target. We have crossed above the cloud on the short term chart. The key thing here is this downside target has been met, which is bearish confirmation, and we do have a move below the cloud, so we're below the cloud, so that's also bearish on that medium-term chart. The long-term chart is still bullish, and we may well be finding some support on that long-term chart. We do have a downside target, but we are not surprised to see downside targets not met in an uptrend. So the interesting thing is just watching precious metals. Are we seeing a floor? Now, it's a little bit early to say. 4100 would certainly be a better level for gold. We'd activate that upside target. We've got resistance to fight all the way up, and that's the key thing about recoveries, is you've always got that resistance to fight. But it is an interesting situation that might be the bottom of the market for precious metals. Now, calling bottoms and tops is generally a little bit of a mug's game. Silver, we've got quite a lot of downside targets, having had a massive run in silver. But again, we are just seeing a little bit of price action building. We did see that in March. It wasn't sustained, so it's too early to say. But again, if we look at the 60-minute chart, I've got a couple of upside targets waiting to see if those are going to be activated. So that's quite key. And if we move to platinum, we're already seeing an upside target that has been activated. Again, you'd want to see a move through 1640 to really confirm that level of resistance has been broken. But we are seeing precious metals generally on the short-term charts starting to show signs of having found a floor. Now, all bets are off, if we make new lows, and we do need to activate these upside targets. So that's going to be quite key. But the interesting thing is that we are seeing signs of a recovery there. Now, it'll be a long time before that medium-term chart is bullish, but is one to watch. And 4,500 is a really critical level that we do need to get back. The psychological level, we can get through 4,500, then we would say that's a recovery. But 4,000, we're above 4,000 this morning, 4,074. Holding 4,000, a psychologically important level for gold, is going to be key. Now, while we're looking at commodities, we can actually also just look at some of the metals. Aluminium, we have seen a sell-off generally in commodities, so we had a downside target aluminium, that's been met. Lead, we've got downside targets here, and prices making new lows, so really quite key there. Zinc, we can see also not quite as bearish, but we do have a downside target there as well. If we look at nickel, we also had a downside target that's nearly been met, and copper, we're also just seeing a downside target, but still a relatively strong chart. So really quite interesting there if we look at that. And of course, the big one in terms of commodities is crude oil, and we're seeing Brent crude pulling all the way back to $70. We're at 71 this morning. We were down yesterday, and we look at the 60-minute chart, we can see here that we were making new lows. That 70 level beckons, and that is a very important level for crude oil. You can see here, if I put the 70 level on the chart, we can see that we are back in that territory. So really what was previously support then became resistance, and then of course the Middle East crisis, likely that we will find some support here. But the interesting thing is that we are back to that long-term level, which is really quite key. Looking at some of the other products, we've got cocoa. This is the long-term chart for cocoa, and we can see here that we have got an upside target, downside target being met. If we go to the daily chart, we are seeing signs of recovery there, so that's really quite key. Coffee was another one where we saw really sinking to new lows on coffee, and then we can see we've activated and we are now back above that level, and that will deactivate that target. And sugar is one that I've talked about a great deal. And we are seeing here that move on sugar, not yet enough to deactivate that downside target. And every time we've had a move to the upside, that has given us the opportunity to create a new downside target. So it's too early to call a bottom there. Looking at some of the other commodities, wheat also lower. Now looking at markets, we've got the futures for the Nasdaq yesterday. We saw, yes, we have got this short-term situation where we just can't make a new high. We are heading, of course, into the 4th of July weekend, so we expect US markets to be quite quiet. Futures today are down slightly. The Nasdaq future is down quite significantly, down 0.75%. So that does suggest we are going lower. We saw SpaceX give up quite a lot of ground yesterday, and this is the 60-minute chart. Now we're starting to see that we have got some meaningful data building on the 60-minute chart. Of course, you can go to the 10-minute. And that is going to be really quite key. And in fact, just do that, in fact, because you'll have more granularity of data. So we call on the 10-minute data. Well, that's requesting from LSEG or Metastock. If you're running on Metastock, we can actually see it in TradingView. This is the 5-minute chart. Again, we've got downside targets. This 150 IPO price is really going to be quite important. It's still requesting that data there from LSEG, so we'll look at that in a minute. But we saw a relatively strong day on the Mag 7, so that was really quite key. And there we have got the downside targets there as well. Looking at the Dow, we can see here that on the Dow we've got the really interesting changes here. If I go for my sixes, you can see that this is on the downside. There's only one with a -6 in the down. That's Walt Disney. Interestingly, Caterpillar was a star performer. That has just turned neutral on the short-term chart, and these are the top performers. So literally, I can go through my charts here and see, and all of these charts are going to be bullish because they're bullish on all 3 time frames. So even though we've got a downside target there, that's the short-term chart, all these medium-term charts are going to be pretty bullish. Looking at SpaceX now, and of course that was the 10-minute chart, pulled in the 10-minute data, quite a lot of data there already, and all you have to do is hit the T key. It's going to put the targets on for you, and in fact I can just put some more targets on by just taking those targets off, and we can see that we have got quite a lot of downside targets on the 10-minute chart for SpaceX, and certainly a move below 150 would not be great. We've got a target all the way to 137, 1 to 140. Below 150, that's where we'd look to next. Not a great looking chart, so definitely one to watch. And if we look at the short-term chart, for the 60-minute chart for SpaceX, we can see on the 60-minute, we've also got these downside targets, 133 and 137. So we're starting to see clusters pointing to that level. So that's it for today. Keep an eye on those trends and those targets. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.